You're listening to The Knowledge Spot, your number one resource for sharing information that promotes success, personal development, and happiness. I'm your host, Jared Cherry, and my goal is to shed a light on the strategies, mindsets, and routines that have led to each of my guests' individual success. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen, and I hope you enjoy what we have in store. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for The Knowledge Spot. Today, I have a guest that I'm not only honored to be interviewing, but I'm so excited. His name is Nick Ruffini, and he is what I would describe as a serial entrepreneur, a professional drummer, as well as a podcast host, and his podcast is called The Drummer's Resource. And again, I'm a huge fan of you, Nick. I listen to your podcast regularly. You're one of the three I listen to, and thank you so much for being on here, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. It's cool to be on the other side of the microphone once in a while.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I got to ask you right off the bat. So when I label those three things, entrepreneur, a podcast host, professional drummers, is there one of those three things that you associate with the most?
No, because I don't think that you really need to choose between any of those. And I sort of think that that's why I've gone down the road that I have. Is because to me, ever since I was a kid, well, first, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like my dad used to get Entrepreneur magazine, and I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was.
Right.
But I would read the magazine. I was young too, and I would read, and I'm like, man, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, but I never even knew what an entrepreneur was. But I was entrepreneurial. I mean, I did the whole thing. Like, I had businesses when I was 8 years old, and like I started a go-kart business when I was 8, and I had a lemonade stand. And when I was in sixth grade, I bought candy in bulk and sold it to the students in school and everything. So then once I started playing music, it was sort of like, everyone always told me, like, you have to choose one or the other. You can either make money or you can be a musician. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. I was like, there has to be a way to do it. So then I sort of carved out my niche of saying, you know what, I can do both. I can be an entrepreneur, I can be a businessman, but I can also be a professional musician and do all of the things that I want to do and sort of, run my life the way that I want to, rather than having my life run me, so to speak. Yeah, I love that idea, and it actually reminds me a lot of, I know you're familiar with Mike Johnston, the drummer, as well, right? He has a quote where he says, I'm not a drummer, I'm just a guy who plays drums. And that really touched with me because, just to give you a bit of background information, I'm actually in the process of getting my second undergraduate degree as a major in drums, and I kind of had this what's an identity crisis, I guess, where I love the drums, I love pursuing it, clearly I'm doing that, but I have all these other endeavors in mind that I want to pursue as well, and that quote really hit home with me, where I'm going, yeah, I'm just a guy who plays drums, I don't have to be just a drummer. Right, yeah, I think that people compartmentalize things, they're like, I'm a drummer, or even inside of drumming too. They say, like, I'm a jazz rock drummer. It's like, why can't you just be a musician? Just be, just whatever. Yeah, man, I'll play jazz, or I'll play a country gig, or I'll play, whatever you need me to do. But I like business, so I'm a businessman too. And you know what? I like tap dancing, and I'm just saying that, like, but like whatever it is, it's like you don't have to be. I think people get caught up in titles too often, and they say, oh, well, if I'm this thing, I can't be this. Like, you can't be a Republican and a Democrat, you know what I mean? Right. We're not going to get into politics because I'm not the one to talk politics.
Gotcha.
But I think people try to identify with one thing or another and sell themselves short a little bit because they're always thinking, I have to be this one thing. If I'm this, I can't be that. And, unless they're mutually exclusive, you can't be. But for the most part, man, you can be as many things as you want to be. You can be a musician, you could be an astronaut, an entrepreneur, a race car driver, and a surfer if you want to. Exactly. And just to paint a picture for the listeners, all you got to do is look up Nick Ruffini on LinkedIn and look at his list. You'll see professional drummer, general manager of a restaurant, founder of or owner of a restaurant, podcast host, and I mean, you wouldn't think any of those are related, and yet at the same time, all you got to do is look at your drumming and your podcast, and you actually managed to bring the two interests together into one phenomenal product. Well, thanks, man. Thanks. I like different things. I mean, with the business stuff, I can't say that I jumped into the restaurant business all on my own. My family's been in the business since '74 and has had 5 different restaurants. So I ran, the restaurants with them before. And then, I sort of had this weird like identity crisis when I was 30, and, I lost like my girlfriend, my house, and my job in 6 days, and then turned 30 and like freaked out. So I was like, I need a little bit more stability, and all the lies. Not that I'm saying that stability isn't good, but all the lies that you tell yourself to sort of talk yourself out of going after your endeavors. And so I was like, I need to really like settle down and do something that maybe I don't necessarily want to do, but it's going to put money in my bank account, put food on the table. So I opened a restaurant with my brother, but I was more passionate about the business than I was about the restaurant itself.
Gotcha.
So it got to a point where I said, and my brother and I are very close, and I said, listen, I got to do my own thing. And so I have to figure out how I can meld drumming and business together. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that, I talk about a lot of those things in the podcast. It's not just about drumming, it's about business. It's about personal development. It's about being better in every aspect of your life. And all of that, whether you're a businessman or whether you're a drummer or whatever, if you're a nurse, if you're a nurse or in nursing school or something like that, whatever it is, I think all of those principles are valid. So I said, why can't I combine all of these things? But I do still, I still want to venture into other businesses too. So like I have, I'm working with a drumstick company, and I, still have the restaurant and have my podcast, and I have some other things that I'm going to be releasing soon. So I love doing that. I love having my hands in a bunch of different things. And I think that just because I'm a quote unquote drummer, I don't think that limits me or anyone else to do what they really want to do. It's just, you just have to figure out how to make it work for yourself and be true to what you want to do.
I agree completely, and I gotta say what initially attracted me to your podcast, even though I've been playing the drums for over 10 years now, I was never a subscriber to things like Modern Drummer, and I never really would follow these drummers on YouTube and things like that, and that's because I had a horrible music education. My elementary school might as well not have had a music program, and in high school, my class was just stoned half the time, and nothing was really being taught. So I would listen to these drummers on YouTube, and they would get so technical into drums, and I was just, I just love playing the drums. I love hearing these things. And then I found your podcast randomly, and I can't remember what the first episode I was listening to, but I really enjoyed the fact that it's just like you said, you managed to incorporate bigger life lessons into the realm of drumming. So it wasn't like a drum podcast, like you said. It was really much more than that.
Right. And that's what I always wanted to do, because I think that I feel the same way that you do. I've never, how am I going to say this without offending people? I've never been a big fan of just of salivating just over drummers and saying, oh my God, they're the greatest people in the world. And that's all I need to do is be on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine, and that's going to make my life complete. Not that I don't want to be on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine.
Right.
I think I put a post on Instagram, and it was a picture of Forbes and a picture of Modern Drummer. And I was like, I want to be on the cover of both of them.
Nice.
But I've never, I just think that there's more to life for me than just getting on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine. So I wanted to use drums as a vehicle and a way to create a community around just having a better life, whether it's better relationships, whether it's more financial success, whether it's better habit formation or better goal setting or anything like that. I can do that all within Drummers Resource, because it's a community of supportive drummers who support each other. And I guess I'm sort of like the ringleader, and that makes it sound like it's a cult, but it was, just a way to really have all of these things together. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, man, we love playing drums too. So
right.
So we can kind of combine all of them together. And yeah, so that's the Drummers Resource.
So do you think, though, I'm curious about this because I find myself wondering the same thing about myself, is when you have this many different interests and focus, and not, I've met drummers who their whole life is drumming, and some of them are amazing, right? I always wonder to myself, can I ever reach that level of drumming when I'm not only interested in drumming? Do you think, you've had guests on your podcast who probably fit in that category where everything they do is about drums? Do you feel like you need to be that focused on drumming, that into practice to reach that level? Or is it possible for someone like you and me with multi-focuses?
Well, I think, when I interviewed Russ Miller, he had a good point, and he said, a lot of guys get the art right and they don't get the commerce right. And a lot of guys get the commerce right, but they don't get the art right. So there's a lot of drummers out there that are okay and make a lot of money through the drumming. And there's like a lot of guys that are amazing that you'll probably never even hear of because they can't get the commerce part right. The way that I've always approached things, I've sort of looked at, there's a saying that he who is everywhere is nowhere. So if you have more than three things that you're focusing on, you don't have a focus. And so for me, I divide, to answer your question in short, yes, I think that you can be successful in a few areas. Do I think you can be successful in 9 different things? No. Right. I mean, to really be at the top of your level. But even the guys that are, if you look at somebody, and I won't even name a drummer, but let's just say someone that you think is the greatest drummer in the world, even to this point, they're probably not practicing 12 hours a day. They're probably practicing a few hours a week, maybe, and then running their lives around everything else. So for me, it's always come down to time management, and that is the biggest thing that I see where people fall short in their lives is they don't manage their time properly. So I can get done, like everybody, if a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I don't have time to go to the gym and I don't have time to practice. Well, I have already practiced for 2 hours and gone to the gym by 8:00 in the morning.
Wow. So what would be your tip then for people who are struggling managing their time? Is there one thing that you make sure you do every day in specific relation to time management?
Get up early. No, because that's such a broad statement and it's hard to do because I was the guy who got up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock. So do you want me to go through like my morning routine, or do you want me to just give some advice on managing your time better?
Your morning routine actually sounds like a good idea.
Okay. So every morning I get up at like between 5 and 5:15 every morning. Oof. And so I get up and I go through like a little ritual that I read this book called The Miracle Morning, and it's a series of things that you go through. So I do a little bit of meditating, and then I'll do some affirmations and some visualization of my future and what I want it to look like. And then part of that, the acronym is SAVERS. So it's silence, which is my meditating. A is for affirmations. V is for visualization. E is for exercise. R is for reading. And S is for scribing or writing. He said he couldn't come up with a creative word. He said saver sounds bad, so he just made the S scribing.
Right.
So I get up in the morning. I do a little bit of meditating, not long, like 5-10 minutes. Do some visualization, and then I write down. I write down my goals. I write down my goals twice a day in the morning and once at night. And then I'll read for 15 minutes depending on, whatever book I'm reading out of. Or right now I'm reading a book by Og Mandino called The Greatest Salesman in the World, where I heard about it from what's that guy's name? Who's the guy that says, all right.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember his name. He's a famous actor.
Oh, I'm Canadian, man, so like pop references with me specifically are just terrible.
I know that he was in well, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So I heard about this book, and it's basically a book that you read a scroll every day for 30 days, and then you move on to the next one, and there's 10 scrolls that you read. So after that, I go to the gym, and then I come home, and I eat breakfast, take a shower, and then I meet guys in the morning. I started this thing called the Drum Breakfast Club.
Yes, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, so we get together every morning, we practice for an hour on the pad, and then I go upstairs. I have a studio above where we practice, so then I go up there, and I'll shed on the kit for an hour, and then I'm home by, I'm home by 9 a.m. and I'm ready to go. So all that stuff is already out of the way. I've already exercised. I've already gone through my daily rituals. I've already practiced and everything. So then, I plan my day, and I plan every hour of my day. And then, manage my time depending on what I have to do that day. The one thing that I can suggest that people do, because a lot of people, two things. One, if you write down your main objectives of what you want to accomplish either that day or that week, and you can sort of use that as a barometer to say, you can check in with yourself throughout the day and say, the things that I'm working on right now, is this getting me closer or farther away to the goals that I have written down on this piece of paper?
Right, I like that.
And if it's not, then you have to stop doing it. So if you're on Facebook, then you have to stop. Or if you are, if you're, whatever it is, even if you're on a phone call that's going longer than it should.
Yeah.
You guys are just, on there bullshitting, and sorry, I didn't mean to curse, but.
No, you can curse all you want, man. Trust me. No big deal on this.
Tell me. No, I'm just kidding. But, if you're on the phone bullshitting with somebody that it should have been a 10-minute conversation and you're on the phone for an hour, well, it doesn't sound like much, but if you do that over the course of a month, and do that 5 times a week, that's a lot of time. So what I suggest is to sort of start getting on the roll of managing your time better is keep a log of what you do every half hour for about a week. And then including sleeping, everything. And then sort of subtract out the necessaries like sleeping and, eating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then see where you're spending most of your time. And be honest with yourself. If you watch TV for 2 hours, don't write down that you watch TV for 45 minutes. So then you start to look at it, and after a week, you may say, wow, I spent 20 hours watching TV this week. Well, that's a part-time job.
Yeah.
So if you start subtracting all of the things out of your day that are really just a waste of time, and our time sucks and take way longer than they should. I know people that they take an hour to eat lunch every day. Well,
right.
Why? You don't need an hour to eat lunch every day.
It's true, but I'm wondering, though, do you think there is a time for balance and having that relaxation in your day as well, where you go, you know what, I don't care what my goal was this week, I just want to sit down and watch TV for 2 hours. Do you think you can afford that every once in a while at least?
I think so, but I think that it has to be built into your time, because I believe in balance. I don't believe in just work. But I also, if you're not where you want to be in life, then why do you feel like you deserve to sit down and watch television?
Right, you almost got to you probably messed up somewhere along the line. You kind of got to pay your time back.
Everything in your life, no matter whether it's good or bad, is just a reflection of your habits.
Right.
Sorry, go on, yeah. I was just going to say, like, I just got married, and so, spending
Congratulations.
time. Thank you, man. But spending time with my wife is extremely important to me. You know, I love her to death. I want to spend all the time in the world with her. But I have to schedule that around my business. Granted, she is great and she understands that I have this ridiculous work ethic. But at night, at 7:30, 8 o'clock, then all bets are off. It's like, all right, I'm done work. We're going to hang out, and that's planned out. But at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, no, I don't need to be watching TV or laying around. It's hard because I work from home.
Gotcha, yeah.
So I have a cat, so he sleeps all day, and I look at him thinking, man, I could do the same thing, and nobody's going to get on my case about it. But at the end of the day, or the end of the week, or the end of the month, or the end of the year, when you're sitting there saying, I wish that I was in a better place than I am now,
do something, right?
Do something about it.
Yeah.
And if you can look back and honestly tell yourself that you gave it 110% during the time that that you had, then you're a success. So whether you're like, I want to buy a jet, and you didn't get to buying a jet, if you gave it everything you had, then that's success to me. But if you're slacking and wasting time and doing all these other things, and I don't want to make it sound like you should just suck all the fun out of your life. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm not saying that at all. But just when you set out to work, that's when you should work. And when you set out to play and have fun, you should play and have fun, as long as it's not going to affect you the next day. Like, if you're going to go out drinking till 3 o'clock in the morning, but you want to get up at 5 a.m. to start working again, it's going to get in your way.
Right. But see, I'm wondering, because I imagine a lot of musicians listening to this, they're going, how the hell does a professional drummer manage to wake up at 5 in the morning when I'm sure a lot of musicians, myself included, can relate to playing gigs and coming home at 3 in the morning?
You don't have to get up early.
Right.
That's
You're saying
not
any time of your day.
Yeah, and I'm not, the reason, the days that, if I'm out playing, then I'm not going to get up at 5:15, but I don't play a lot Monday through Friday, like outside of sessions. Like, I'm not doing a lot of like weekly gigs.
Gotcha.
I mean, unless I'm on the road, but that's a totally different animal. I'm saying when I'm home and sort of focused on what's going on. But it doesn't really matter what time you get up. It just matters what you accomplish in your day.
I see what you're saying. As long as you manage the time you do have while awake efficiently, it really doesn't matter.
Right. It's like, they always say you shouldn't eat past something, like 8 o'clock or 10
something
o'clock.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, if you go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning,
you better eat.
then you should eat after 8 o'clock, because, if you don't get up at 7 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, then, yeah, you should. So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. For me, what I'm just expressing is that the time that you're awake and the time that you want to get something done, you really need to be focused on it. If, going back to this is like a totally long answer to your first question, but if you want to be focused on, or, if you want to have your focus on 3 things,
yes,
then you really have to manage your time well. You have to. There's no other way around it.
I agree completely, and I find that the people with good time management skills, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I have been not too long ago the worst when it came to time management, and I made a major transition in my life where I said, you know what, it's time for me to set my foot down and do something about it. And I find that people who have similar habits to yourself or mine when it comes to time management, i.e. writing in a journal every morning, planning out your day, planning out your week, they may not be the most talented in a lot of their endeavors, but just because they're so efficient with the time they have, they almost surpass that level of talent that might seem like it reigns supreme. And I'm talking specifically from the realm of music. Again, I just started my second undergraduate in music, and I'm coming across these students who, these are guys who've been taking drum lessons since they were 4 years old, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And you watch these other students, they're not as confident, they're not as cocky, and you just see them. This is the guy coming early in the morning with me, and he's practicing, and you're like, this guy, he's catching up to this guy he was so afraid of not long ago, and it's simply because he's managing his time better.
Right. Totally. I practice 8 hours a day and I'm not getting any better. Well, what are you doing in your practice session?
Yeah.
And then you go in and you figure out that for, half the time they're on Facebook and the other half of the time they're like, they're playing grooves that they know, and then they're watching YouTube videos, and so
yeah,
it's you can get more done. And Benny Greb talked about this when I interviewed him, that you can get everything that you need to get done in an hour a day.
Interesting.
It's just like the gym. Like, people think that they have to go to the gym for 3 hours a day to be in great shape. No, you just got to maximize it. You got to maximize your time that you're there. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to. There's a quote that it made me think of it when you said the talent and skill thing, is that Will Smith said that talent you have naturally, and skill comes from hours and hours and hours of beating on your craft. And the way that he said that he's always succeeded was working harder than everybody else. He's not maybe not as talented, and maybe not as good looking, or maybe not as tall, or maybe not as fast. He said, but where he excels is all of his hard work and, sickening work ethic and being focused. And that's his in this interview that I'm talking about, he mentions about the way that when he realized how focused he needed to be to really be successful, he started to do that. And that's when, he became Will Smith.
Interesting. And it makes me, it really speaks to what I believe to be, at least in my generation, like a current dilemma where talent is so overrated. And again, I come from the realm of musicians, but I think this could apply in a lot of other aspects of life where I'll get offered these jam sessions to prepare for a gig or something for that, and I'll turn them down, and the guy goes, "What are you thinking? This bass player, he's amazing. Like, you'd be crazy not to play with him. He's a savant. He can pick it up right on the spot. He doesn't need to know what key it is. He just knows it." And I'm going, "Yeah, but the guy doesn't practice." And it's to me, it's like when you live in a city like I do, Toronto, where we're very fortunate, where a kid loves drums. Let's say 3 out of 4 of those kids, their parents can afford drum lessons. Mm-hmm. So chances are the kid that loves drums probably has a natural talent for it. So when you live in a city like this where the talent is able to be fed, to me, it really loses its value in the big picture. And what becomes more important to me personally, at least, is how does this guy use his talent? Is he using it effectively, or is he taking advantage of it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree, man.
Yeah, it seems to be like a lot of people I meet, they just overrate how much talent is. And again, I can come back to the example of that kid I saw practicing every single day in the morning. He passed what he was looking up to at one point, and he might not even know it, right? But yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. I do want to backtrack a little bit though, Nick. I'm obsessed with depression, crisis, and failure. And you mentioned you had in 6 days what most people would probably commit suicide over. So I got to touch on that. I know if you might not want to talk about it, but
no, man, let's talk about it. I love it.
Let's do it, man.
I love the F word, man. Failure is my favorite thing in the world, and it is. And it sounds crazy. I'm sure the listeners are like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" But if you're not failing, then you're not really pushing yourself. You're not really stepping out of your comfort zone. You're not really, you're not growing. So the situation that I was in before with, house, job, girlfriend, all that stuff, although that was a failure, that was, I don't want to say that it was out of my hands, because I think that everything that happens in life has to do with decisions that you've made at some point.
Right.
But I will say that the way that you're reacting from that failure. So for me, I could have shriveled up and just sort of gave up and said, well, that's it. Maybe not committed suicide, but sort of went down this road of either depression or down the road of doing something that I didn't want to do just because it put money on the table and things like that. So I think that, and I've been, to be quite frank, I've been in, that was a really rough time in my life. I mean, after all that stuff happened, and I had money in the bank and all that stuff, so I was fine. But then after a while, you start running through that money, and I was building a business at the time. So all of my money was going into that.
Right.
And then, so I had, I'm trying to make this story short, but I was supposed to move to LA in April, and this happened in March. So the place where I was living had already been rented, and they were coming in the next month. So then technically I didn't have a job. So I couldn't get a new apartment because I didn't have a job. I was like, listen, I'll pay all of the rent a year in advance, and they wouldn't let me do that. So I had to move home. So I moved home with my parents, and I had no job. And then I had money, but I was starting to run through it because I was pouring most of the money into the business and paying bills, while I was sort of in limbo. And it got to the point, man, it was bad. I had 75 cents in my bank account, and
wow.
and ran through my savings. I ran through everything, not because I was spending it frivolously, but I had bills and, bills to pay and a business to build. So, but they always say it's darkest before dawn. And what came out of that was, I shouldn't say what came out of it, but shortly after that, I met this girl who is now my wife, and I met another guy who started a drumstick company. So he and I started working together, and then I started Drummers Resource a few years ago, and all that. So, all that stuff now seems like a distant memory, and life is really, really good now, financially, emotionally, and all that stuff. But at the time it was hard. It was really hard. So, for anybody out there that's going through it, I think that you have to sort of look at your life no matter what's going on and try to find the good in life. So every morning maybe get up and write 3 things that you're thankful for, and talk about your, maybe write at the end of the day about 3 great things that happened to you that day. Just to sort of keep you focusing on the things that are good in your life rather than bad. So if you're going through a tough time financially, maybe you have some great friends in your life, so you should be grateful for that. Maybe your family is healthy, or if your family's not healthy, maybe, there's things going on in your career that are a bright spot, and, just something to sort of, I don't want to say take the bad stuff that's going on and push it away and forget about it, but not to dwell on it, and dwell on the positive things that are going on in your life.
Right, and I agree that seems so important to me. I think the biggest mistake people make when they get into that state of depression is it's 2 things, to me at least. It's 1, it's feeling sorry for yourself, and it's 2, not realizing that it seems to be a common experience amongst successful people that depression was a necessary ingredient. So you've almost got to reorient yourself to view this depression as, this is something I'm going to get through. Chances are, if you live in the United States or Canada, you're probably not doing that bad in the big picture. And not only will you get through it, but you're going to learn these valuable lessons that seem to come time and time again. Every single interview I've done so far has been people who have gone through amazing states of depression and have come out of it amazingly stronger.
Right. And I don't know if that's a necessity for success, though.
Interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I don't think that you can't be successful without having a really shitty past. Or it's like a blues musician. You don't have to be depressed to be a blues musician.
Right.
So I think when you start talking to all of these successful people, and I do the same thing because I talk to not only drummers, but, Fortune 500 CEOs. I talk to everybody because I'm infatuated with success and habit and sort of the path that people have taken. And I will agree with you that there's a common theme that a lot of people who are really, really successful have gone through some sort of struggle and use that as fuel to the fire.
Right.
But I don't know if you necessarily have to have that very bad part in your life in order to become successful.
And I'm sure that's got to be for all the kids born rich and maybe living spoiled and having a good time in their life. That should be some encouraging words. So I think that's a good way to think about it, because you're right. I mean, it really, if you know these lessons in life that most people are learning through depression, you've just learned them through being wise and doing your job, or keeping up with research, things like that. Then yeah, I guess why force yourself to go through a terrible time? But
I will say this though, there is. If you want to do something on your own and you really want it to be successful, then there's going to be a dark time when, if you're building a business or if you're trying to do something that I don't want to say hasn't been done before, but is an uphill battle, like even, making it in the music industry or starting a new business or whatever the case may be, you're going to go through some time where you're going to have to sacrifice. The money's not going to be rolling in. The praise is not going to be rolling in. The support is not going to be rolling in. People are going to be laughing at you. People are going to be telling you to go take the safe route. They're going to tell you that it can't be done. And most of the time, that's just people pushing their fears onto you. But
right.
People told me that I couldn't do Drummer's Resource. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, it's in its infancy. I have so many ideas and so many different irons in the fire with that the next few years are going to be amazing. And
that's awesome, man.
But people are going to tell you like, oh, don't do that. Like, don't set yourself up for failure. You're just why would you want to put yourself through that? Why don't you just go get a regular job and all this stuff? And which a regular job is cool if you want that, but I didn't want that. So, so yes, you don't have to go through this severe depression to be successful, but you are going to, if you want to do something meaningful and you want to do something that really, that you love and that is more of an uphill battle, then yeah, there's going to be some dark time. Definitely.
Right. So then I'm wondering, after this depression kind of subsided a bit, this 6 days of hell, was there a specific point that you can remember where you went, not only are things going to be okay, but things are looking really good? Does anything click with you there?
Yes, there's one thing. So I was sort of searching for something. I don't know what I was searching for, but I was just searching.
Right.
For sort of a direction or like what I thought I should do. I knew that I had to make a change, but I just didn't really know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, how I wanted to do it. And I remember reading this article, and it talked about being location independent. So I don't know if you're aware of what that means, but
no, I've never heard of it.
Okay, so location independent is basically you make your living somewhere in a way that you don't have to be, quote unquote, somewhere to make your living.
Right, so you could be at home while something's happening somewhere else and you're making money off of it?
Right, you can be at home, you can be in the Bahamas, you can be wherever you want to be. And so I started investigating what that was, and I said to myself, that's exactly what I've always wanted. And I'm not opposed to working. I think that that's clear. But I said I can't go to a job every single day like a 9-to-5 job. I can't do it. There's something in my brain that will not let me do it. I wish I could. Well, I don't wish I could, but
right.
I think I'd be happier. No, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty fucking happy now. But so I read this article and I was like, location independent. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. That's it. That is completely it. So I went deep. I like went in and studied every single thing about location independent lifestyle that I could. So it's basically like laptop entrepreneurs, but so that was sort of the turning point where it was like, okay, I found my why, and now I just have to figure out my what. Like I figured out, why I'm here, so to speak, but I have to figure out what I'm going to do to make this a reality. So I got as much information as I could about it, and coincidentally, I was driving back and forth from Philadelphia to the New York area because I was dating a girl up here, and or my now wife, but I was dating her at the time, so I was listening to podcasts all the time. And then I said, man, I really want to, I'll be up in the New York area and I want to study with some drummers. And I was thinking maybe I could tape the lessons with the drummers just to have them. And I was like, well, maybe I could sort of spin that into a podcast. And that whole time I was really getting into personal development, into habit formation, into just personal growth as a whole, and was also hanging out with all these drummers, and I was listening to podcasts. So it was sort of the perfect storm where everything, it's so weird, everything just sort of like fell in my lap.
Right, and so if I'm understanding this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was, for you, it was kind of like finding your star, so to speak. When you found out the why, the what kind of ensued from that. It kind of just came naturally, whether it be because of circumstances or because you specifically knew why you were after something.
Yep, and the crazy thing is, I never thought about it.
Huh.
It was just like, this is what I'm going to do. Of course that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a podcast called The Drummers Reason. Well, I didn't know the name, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a podcast. And I'll start interviewing drummers, and then I'll start talking about personal development. Like, of course. Why? Yeah, of course that's what I'm going to do.
Interesting. So as you have this why in your head, and you're saying you didn't know, you knew what you were going to do, but you weren't really thinking about it. So you said at a very young age you were obsessed with the idea of success and being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Were you pursuing this why with the idea of, I need to be successful while I'm doing it? I want the fame, I want the fortune, I want the whatever I'm after?
No, I was more searching for the freedom of having the lifestyle that I wanted.
That's beautiful, man. So it was never about necessarily success. It was about kind of really just pursuing a passion and knowing deep down that would actually be success to you personally.
I was going to say, isn't that the definition of success?
Right. I guess I've always that's a.
If you ask if you ask 1,000 people what their definition of success is, no one's going to give you the same answer. If you ask them what failure is, though, most people give the same answer for failure. It's not reaching your goals.
Huh.
Or they'll say that in some way, or
right.
But success, I don't know. Success to you is probably totally different than success to me.
Yeah,
not in a bad way, but you might say, "Hey, man, I want to buy a 1-bedroom house on a lake," and that's success to me.
Yeah, it's very personal. So then I'm wondering then, when you look at your past education, from what I understand, you went to school for both music as a drum major, I'm guessing, and business as a second major, right? Is there any lessons that you learned specifically in that university college setting that you've applied to your life every day, one from music and one from business?
So from music was the idea of writing down the stuff that you do every day. Like you're charting your hours, because all the students would always say they didn't have time to practice. Right,
okay.
So we had a master class. Somebody came in. I don't even remember who it was, to be honest with you. I should, but it was pretty impactful. But he said, write down everything that you do, and wherever you're spending most of the time, that's where your priorities are.
Interesting. And then in business?
And then in business, I don't know, man. It'd be hard to pinpoint one. One thing that really sticks out to me when I was in college, and I don't know if this is necessarily a lesson or not, but I remember we had a debate, and I was on one side. I forget what side of the debate I was on, and even what the debate was about, but it was like an organized debate in one of my classes. So we won the debate, and my teacher asked me to stay after class, and I was like, oh, great, here we go. And after class, he said, every time we have a debate, he said, you're always going to win.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, you have the ability to not look at the minute details of everything. He said, you can look at an entire overview of what's going on, and then assess the entire situation and know what to do to sort of facilitate whatever you need to do. He said, you will be the CEO of a company one day because you will be very good at it.
Wow. So I can imagine that being extremely inspiring, obviously.
It was inspiring, but at the time I was just sort of like, oh, okay, that's cool. Thanks. But I told that to my wife maybe like a year ago, and she said, that's totally what you do now. So like with every business I've ever been in, whether I was the quote unquote CEO or not, I've acted as if I was. I shouldn't say I acted as, I just assumed the role of that. So I'm always the guy that takes the whole picture and says, okay, here's what we need to do. And you know what I'm really horrible at? I'm horrible at like the tiny, minute
I'm the same way, man.
Execution. I'm very bad at that, but I'm really good at overseeing it and getting people to sort of, make all the wheels turn and sit back and evaluate the whole thing and say, okay, you need to do this a little bit. We need to tweak this. All right, we need you to roll this out. You two need to work together and figure all that stuff out. So while at the time I didn't realize how impactful it was, the fact that he saw that in me at such a young age, and the fact that it still holds true to this day, is pretty, inspiring and just pretty awesome that he saw that when I was 18 years old or 19 years old.
Yeah, I can relate in the sense that it's very difficult to understand who you are as a person, and whether you have someone like in your situation who told you a very key point about yourself, or any other tool. And a tool I would suggest to listeners is I don't know if you've heard of this, but her name's Molly Hogshead, I believe. I know, weird last name, but she has a personality test that's it's opposite from the standard Myers-Briggs, where the Myers-Briggs personality test is describing how you see the world, right? It's how your outlook on other people, how you view social situations. This one is more how the world sees you. And I got a very interesting result back. We're very similar to you where, I'm horrible with attention to detail and I can see a big picture much easier. And when I learned that bit of information and I could go to myself, I should focus on that. That should be what I care about, not the minor details. That's someone else what they're good at. It really, that sense of identity that everyone thinks they know who they are when they're born and, just growing up, but I'm constantly learning new pieces about myself, and what I've learned after learning these pieces about myself is embracing them, really being yourself, as cliche as it sounds. It's going to be so effective.
And you're going to fight with yourself every single day if you're trying to do stuff that you're not good at. And it's hard. It takes a bit of maturity to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm really bad at that.
Dude, yesterday we had a fancy dinner, my girlfriend and I and a bunch of friends, and again, I'm horrible with minor details. I'm terrible at making things like look pretty and knowing like this button should be up and this didn't. But I thought this time you said, no, I'm gonna. My girlfriend's good at this stuff, so I sent her a picture. I'm like, I want to wear this, and that. What do you think? She's like, golden, go for it. So I'm doing my best, like dressing up nice, and we get there, and I'm feeling like $1 million. And then one of her friends, she looks at me, she goes, Jared, you missed one of the belt loops. I'm just like, it doesn't matter what you do. It's just not me, right? And I've learned to move past that. Like you said, be mature and go, I'm horrible at this. Someone else can do it for me. And, maybe if I'm lucky, someone will be dressing me one day because I'm just going to do a terrible job no matter what.
Right. And, it's hard for me, especially because growing up in the family business, my dad is the guy that's like, I have to do everything. And I can do it better than everybody. And he's human, so he sucks at some things.
Right.
He's amazing at other things, but he sucks at some things, just like everybody else. You suck at things, I suck at things, everybody does. It's just, that's how it is. And so for a while, I kind of thought, oh, well, that's just how you do things. You do everything and take on all of the responsibility yourself. But now that I do it where I delegate things out, I save so much time and effort and frustration, and it costs me money to get people to do things, but I'd rather pay somebody for 2 hours of their time than waste 10 hours of my time trying to figure out how to move a sign-up box on my website 6 inches to the right.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And I'm my most valuable thing is my time, and I'm very, very, very strict with my time. So if somebody's like, hey, can you do this? Well, how long is it going to last? What's it for? What's the outcome of it? I'm such a walking contradiction because yesterday I went to meet a buddy of mine. He's the drummer for the Conan O'Brien. He's in the house band.
Oh, awesome.
And he said, hey man, I'm in town. He lives in LA. So he said, hey man, I'm in town. Let's go grab some lunch. And we had some business stuff that we want to talk about. I'm like, yeah, cool. And I met him at 1:30 and I left at 7:00. Wow. So I wasn't very stingy with my time yesterday, but sometimes I guess you got to contradict yourself, and
that balance, right? That inherent balance in everything really is a contradiction.
Yeah. I mean, and it was funny because I got home yesterday and I was like, I should have been more stingy with my time. But then I said, you know what, man, I see him 3 times a year. So
yeah, exactly.
And then I'll make it up on Saturday and I'll work all day Saturday. So that's cool. But that's the exception rather than the rule. So, but most of the time I'm extremely, extremely strict with my time. And I think everybody should be. Like I schedule my day in 15-minute increments.
Wow.
So it's like, hey man, can we jump on a call? Yep. I got from 2:15 to 2:30.
You know exactly what's going to happen. And
right.
That makes me wonder then, when you're planning out your days like this, and I had a conversation with a guy with a similar kind of scheduling where he actually schedules his entire week in advance, and it's kind of down to the minute, like you said. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you say to those people who say you need to be present with your life when you think too much of what's going on in the future? You have no idea what's going to change. You know what I mean?
Right.
What's your opinion on the whole? There's a big mindfulness movement happening right now, and I'm wondering how you feel about that.
Well, for me, I could never plan my whole week in advance just because my schedule changes. But planning it for the day, yeah, I totally do that. And this is the reason why I schedule my day is because I want to be more mindful. and I want to be more present. So if I didn't do that, like you and I have this interview set up at 1:00, right?
Right.
So I'm giving you my 110% undivided attention. My computer screen is off. I'm not on my phone. I'm not reading a book. I'm not sending a text message. I'm not doing anything. I'm giving you my 100% undivided attention. So from 2 to 2:15, if I have a phone call, they get 15 minutes of 100% of me rather than, an hour of 50% of me.
I like that, and what it makes me think and how I've really approached this is I agree, you need to be mindful in the day. You do need to be present, but what I think a lot of this mindful movement is misinterpreting is the fact that sometimes being present means scheduling out your day. Like, that's what the present moment calls for.
Right. And I am being present. I think that I'm not sacrificing life to schedule out my day. Right. But I'll schedule everything. If my wife and I are going out to dinner at 7:00, guess what my wife gets? She gets 100% of me at 7:00. Right. We're not sitting at dinner and I'm texting, business or having business transactions. Like when we go out to dinner, we look around and not to say that I'm better than anybody else or anything like that, because I'm definitely not. But I see couples out to dinner and they're all on their phone
all the time. Yeah,
and it's like, what side do you want? Do you want me always to sort of be available, or do you want me to be 100% available when you want me? And I think that my friends like it more. I think that my wife likes it more. I think that my family likes it more. And I was admittedly really, really bad with that stuff. I mean, especially the cell phone thing. I would literally be in the middle of a conversation with somebody and I'd be talking and I would pull out my phone.
I hate that.
And I would, it was a habit. And then, so I really needed to get that in check. So I decided to get it in check and really I guess the reason why I'm so strict with my time is because, listen, I'm going to give you my undivided attention when we schedule it, but I'm going to totally ignore you when we're not supposed to be connected.
Right. So that's how you go about giving 100%. And I think
right.
you're actually,
and not in a rude way,
Yeah, of course not. That's just what the time calls for. And I think you're actually touching on a phenomenon that, again, in my generation specifically, it's really hurting a lot of people.
How old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
Okay.
So what I'm talking about, specific example, is I was taking a class, and it's a class that's known, they're actually phasing this class out. It's called Music and Cultures, and it was, all your ear training with different time signatures and things like that. And the grades were every single year, the professor said the grades in the ear training portion are dropping. They're dropping. And so, just to give you an example, it'd be like, again, find the time signature of the song, find the scale the song's in, find the theme, stuff you would never use in real life, really. But,
it's just oral training.
It's just all ear training, right? And he found the grades are going down, and he goes, it's not that you guys are getting stupider every year. It's that every single year there's more distractions happening in class. People are on laptops now. People are on their phones.
Absolutely.
It's so key. And I ended up coming out, again, not to toot my own horn. We can get into this another time because we are running out of time. But I came to music school with my background being a garage band. I did not know. I got placed in an advanced class somehow, and they asked me what's a viola? Like, I had to chart some orchestra thing with a viola, and I went up to the professor and said, I don't know what a viola is. So when they're telling me to find time signatures and to find the scales these songs are in, I was freaking the hell out because I had never heard of these terms until like a week before. So what I did was I took his advice and I put away my cell phone. I never bring a laptop to class. I always have pen and paper, and I just listened. I just listened to everything he said, wrote down every tip I could take, and I ended up doing amazing. And I really think it's not because I had a knack for this kind of thing. It was just because I listened. I paid attention to the tips and tricks that would help me.
Mm-hmm. That's why everything that I write down on paper.
Yeah.
Like all of I have a journal, and I have this book that I work out of that it's a planner that I write my goals down and plan my whole day out in. And then I have this other thing called the 5-minute journal that I write in every day. But it's all books, and people I've seen like, oh, don't they have an app that you can put all that stuff in? Or, and I'm like, I don't want an ad. I don't want it on a screen. I want it on a piece of paper that I can write it down. And like I live by my calendar on my computer and everything, but the stuff that I'm trying to get away, I'm trying to be, like you said, more mindful of things going on and more present. I don't need a screen to do that. So I think that you have to go, you have to go analog every once in a while.
I agree, because the fact is that digital will bring up a lot of distractions. Your email will come up or someone will message you on Facebook, things like that. So naturally, it just makes it harder. And
that's what I did here. Once we signed on, I closed out everything. I turned off my email, I turned off all that stuff, and turned my screen off, and now it's just us. We're here, rather than me talking to you and you ask me a question and I'm like, huh? What? What'd you say? Can you? Oh, sorry.
Which again, you go to a dinner, you go to like a movie and dinner, and you look around at the other couples or the other people with their friends, and you're like, man, these they're not even like listening to each other. They're talking to someone else while they're eating, and they might be enjoying each other's company, but not to the full extent they could be.
Totally.
So yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. But again, like I said, we're kind of running out of time here. I wanted to know, in my opinion at least, Nick, you have one of the most successful podcasts I've ever come across. And I guess I'm a bit biased because I'm a drummer, but you do an amazing thing. And
well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm just wondering, could you offer 2 tips? The number one mistake you see podcasts make, and I'm trying to find the wording for the opposite of that, I guess you could say.
So the number one mistake that I see with podcasters, I think a lot of podcasters don't listen to their audience enough. So they're not reporting on or interviewing or talking about the topics that their audience wants them to talk about. They're talking about the topics that they want to talk about. And your audience is the most important thing. Without your audience, you have nothing. So, it's going to be your mom and your girlfriend listening to your podcast. So you have to listen to the audience, and this is sort of a 2-part answer, but 1, listening to your audience, and 2, is the content that you're putting out maximizing the value? Are you adding value to the listeners, or are you doing it to make yourself feel good? And every single piece of content that I put out, I run it past that test, and I say, is this adding value to the listeners, or is this just something that I want to do? That's why there's not a lot of videos of me like playing all these crazy chops online.
Right.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for my audience. I could put them up there, sure. Like I can play all that gospel chop shit and all. Like I can do all that, but like I'm not downing anyone who does that. I'm just saying it's not right for me and my audience.
Right. So then on the opposite end of the spectrum, is there anything that stands out amongst the good podcasts you see? Without, you could easily answer this as saying, oh, they're the ones who listen to their audience, and maybe something else, something a bit different?
Let's see. The one good thing that all good podcasts have is consistency. So if you say that you're going to release a podcast every Wednesday, you better release a podcast every Wednesday.
Right.
So there's a lot of podcasts that, put things out sporadically. And then there's, like my podcast comes out every Monday. So once your audience, especially once you start to build your audience and they start to count on that podcast being released and then it doesn't get released, then you've just lost credibility. So the podcasts that do it really, really well are delivering on a consistent basis, delivering really high quality stuff, listening to their audience, and, just making sure that they're delivering what their audience expects of them on a consistent basis.
And I'm going to speak again. just how much of a fan I am of your podcast. I love that I can wake up in the morning, the beginning of each week, update my podcast app that I have on my tablet. Boom, new Drummers Resource episode every time. No matter what. I think once you went on your honeymoon not long ago, and we might have missed a couple weeks there.
No, man, I released them all during my honeymoon.
Okay, so I'm wrong there then.
No, I took one vacation day and didn't release a podcast. But the only reason it didn't come out, I think something like somebody missed it was scheduled and then something happened or whatever it was.
Right.
But,
so yeah, I'm gonna take that to heart, man, because you're right. Just the fact that I can rely on, I'll have something not only good to listen to, but something educational to listen to. It really makes my Monday mornings, it makes my Tuesday mornings much better.
Good, man. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm going to 5 days a week soon, so.
Oh my God. Wow. That's awesome, dude. So Nick, we're running out of time here, man. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. This was just amazing. I want to thank you so much again.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime, dude. And people who want to check out Nick's podcast, even if you're not drummers, and if you are drummers, you have no excuse here. The Drummers Resource, you got to listen to it. It's just, again, not only is it a fun listen, you learn so much. He has some amazing guests on, and yeah, Nick, you're an inspiration, man.
Thank you. You're an inspiration to me, man. I'm digging. I can't wait till your podcast comes out because I love the idea of it. So I've actually toyed around with the idea of launching something, maybe not the same, but
right. That means a lot to hear, though, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait till it comes out because I'll definitely be a listener.
Oh, that's great. If people want to follow you on social media, Nick, where can they look for you?
Best place is all the normal social media. I'm on Facebook at Drummers Resource. I'm on Instagram at Drummers Resource, and I'm on Twitter at Drummers R Source because Drummers Resource is 16 characters. You can only have 15.
I hate that.
Oh, it's the worst. So I was like, all right, I guess people are going to be like, he can't spell resource. But it's Twitter's Drummers R Source, and yeah, you can check out the podcast. A new one comes out every Monday, and the website is drummersresource.com.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Nick, and I hope I get to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, man. It would be my pleasure to talk to you again. And also, just for your listeners, if they have any questions for me, they can definitely just email me at nick@drummersresource.com.
Awesome, dude. All right. You take it easy, man, and thank you again.
That's it for today's episode. If you guys like what you heard, follow us on Twitter at _theKspot.net, search for The Knowledge Spot on Facebook or SoundCloud, or check us out at www.thekspot.net. Lastly, if you guys have any questions for me, I plan on doing my own personal Q&A sessions through YouTube, so email me at contact@thekspot.net.